Welcome to The Growth Shift, the podcast where we unlock the psychological and strategic blueprints of predictable growth. If you've built a successful business, you know the truth. Your expertise is high value, but your time is finite. The question is, how do you sustain that success without sacrificing your most valuable asset? We believe that the next level of success requires a strategic pivot, a fundamental shift that moves beyond the old ways. In every episode, we dive into the critical turning points of industry leaders and uncover how they're leveraging AI not as a shortcut, but as the strategic force for their next growth shift. Today, we dive in with a leader who is defining the future of their industry. This episode is brought to you by Valentix, your strategic growth partner. At Valentix, we believe that trust and authentic relationships are the only true currency in high-value business. We challenge the status quo by building an AI-powered client acquisition engine that enhances your human connection, helping you move beyond the slow growth of referrals. Our AI-powered systems eliminate the grind, allowing you to break through the noise, automate tasks, and free up time to focus on transformative client impact. If you're ready to build a predictable growth engine, learn more at valentix.io. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we're joined by Jeff Jones, sales leader at Violand Management Associates. Jeff's career is a compelling journey of self-discovery and strategic adaptation, having stumbled into sales in college and evolved into a leader at the largest advisory services firm for the disaster restoration industry globally. After a pivotal shift from product-first selling to value-first selling, Jeff now helps trades businesses from plumbing to HVAC build robust systems, vision, and culture, empowering them to scale beyond being a chuck in the truck. His insights into problem solving, professional training, and the critical importance of human relationships in a tech-driven world offer a powerful blueprint for entrepreneurs navigating growth. Jeff, welcome to The Growth Shift.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you having me.
Great to have you on. You've got quite a dynamic background, and the way that you approach business today, as I understand it, straightforward, no fluff. Like, let's get down to it and see what we can do. Your journey began in college, right?
Pure accident.
You said, yeah, no clue what you wanted to do. You stumbled into something that essentially brought you to where you are today. Tell us a little bit more about that foundational journey and just some of those biggest lessons you took along the way.
Yeah, I grew up. My father's a serial entrepreneur. He had businesses, so I grew up in that small business atmosphere. Went to college with just no clue on what I was going to do with my life. I graduated high school and parents said, you can't stay here anymore. You got to get out. So I went to school, stumbled around for a while, ended up probably my junior, I switched majors 3-4 times. My junior year, I thought, well, I grew up in business. I kind of know business. Maybe I'll give that a shot. Trying to choose courses, came across a marketing class, took that, liked it. Then came across a sales class and thought, boy, that would be an easy A, and signed up for that. And from that point on, I was hooked. And that's when I knew what I wanted to do. To the disappointment of my father, who does not like salespeople very much, but he'll grin and bear it now. But it's been a wonderful 26 years in the sales industry, selling a variety of different products and services, but really getting to meet some awesome people and trying to help them solve some problems.
You know, sales is a very dynamic career or part of a business. I mean, business relies on sales, and there's different ways that people approach it, right? To me, when I think of sales, it's helping at the end of the day, right? As long as you truly have something can serve people and help them, right? You're seeing whether or not you can provide them with a service, with a solution to their problem, to their pain, to their desires. What are some of perhaps the biggest lessons that you learned in your early sales career that allowed you to, become a top performer and to really pave the way forwards for yourself?
Yeah, there's two of them that stick out. My first job out of college was with Shaw Industries, who's the world's largest manufacturer of floor covering, and I was a territory rep for them. And so I called on flooring stores. I had 20 counties in rural Northeast Ohio. And I had a manager who was very good. And I'm fortunate to where I still work with him today here at Violand Management. He came over to our company a few years after I did. But he taught me something early on. So when you're selling carpet, you want to sell rolls of carpet because that's where the volume is and that's where the big commission dollars are. But he stressed early that you're never going to sell a whole bunch of rolls of carpet until you start treating those 10-foot cuts of carpet with the same level of service and energy that goes into it. So just because it's a $100 order versus a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 order, it doesn't change how you approach it. You have to give everything you have to all of them because that's the muscle memory that you have to create. That's the service level that you have to be known for doing. So that was lesson number one. And then I would tell you that the other one was really getting in the shift from not just throwing up on people when you first meet them and telling them how great your product is, how great your service is, how wonderful and different you are and all of that. Because you have no idea if your product or service is any good to the person you're selling it to because they're going to have different needs, different expectations. And when you start making the sale not about you, not about your product, but about them and what are they dealing with and where are their problems, where are their opportunities, and how can you become a problem solver instead of a salesperson? Nobody wants to be sold to, but everybody wants a problem solved. And so when you reframe those conversations into curiosity and asking questions and trying to learn more about them, and then, hey, let's talk maybe about this, and would this perhaps be of a good fit for you, and reframing that conversation so it's friendly and it's conversational. People enjoy that. The walls come down and you start being a lot more successful because you start being a lot more real.
I love that. Being more real, being more human, actually being able to build trust, build a relationship through the process. I mean, that speaks for itself. Something that I love especially about the first lesson you shared, right? If you're ever going to sell the big rolls, you need to take the same level of intensity and care to selling those 10-foot tracts of carpet, right? Because at the end of the day, sales, a lot of it is psychology as well. And it's not just psychology of who it is you're trying to help, but psychology of yourself as a salesperson. And just looking at that example you used there, right? At that big role, that's the high ticket offer. That's the big commission, right? If you're going into that and thinking that, you have a lot more stress because you don't have the muscle memory, right? You need to be able to take the same intensity and level of care to a small sale. So when it gets to the big ones as well, it is muscle memory. It feels natural. It feels normal. You don't feel that increased heart rate as a salesperson thinking that, there's just so much more weight to this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what he really stressed to me that made sense was, look, that little 10 by 10 piece of carpet that's going to help somebody redo their living room means just as much to them as the person who's buying that whole roll, that whole house of carpet. And you have to treat it that way because my customer wasn't necessarily the flooring store. My customer was my customer's customer. And I had to make certain that was the individual that was thought of and was taken care of and received that great service, that great experience. Because if I can make my customer look good in front of their customer, then I have a customer for life.
It's usually the smaller segments that are often underserved, right? Because as you said, that 10 by 10 piece of carpet, it's probably going to mean more to that homeowner who, this is what they can have rather than perhaps a large commercial buyer trying to outfit a whole building, right?
Yeah, if you do the right things, you ask the right questions, you solve the right problems, sales is a lagging indicator of that. Control the things you can control, and the rest takes care of itself.
Sales is a constant evolution of solving problems, which often, leads to a constant evolution of oneself as well. Right, Jeff, you've been in sales for a while now. When we look at everything that you've learned, what was that biggest growth shift moment that you had where, you realized or you were able to reshape or change how it is that you think about sales and business today?
When you're selling a service like that, majority of the people out there are not going to be your client at the time that you're speaking with them. It's just do the numbers on it. Here in the disaster restoration world, it's only about 2.5% of all policies are going to have a claim in any given year. That means 97.5% of the people out there are not your client, but at some point they will be. But if you look at everybody as a client, you just start selling and you just start going after them and you be super aggressive with it. I know it sounds great and it looks good in movies. In the real world, you get old and you get tiresome. And they don't view you anymore as a resource. They look at you as an annoyance. And so instead of taking everybody as a customer, if you can take everybody as an opportunity to learn and ask the right questions and ask detailed follow-up questions. And when I look for hiring a salesperson, there's only one trait, there's only one quality that I know translates. Yes, I want you to be a great athlete. because that means you work really hard. I want you to be a Boy Scout because that meant, or an Eagle Scout because that meant you became dedicated to something. You're willing to put the time and get there, or a fabulous musician. That tells me you're good at something, but it doesn't tell me you can sell. The only thing that tells me you can sell is if you're curious. I pay as much or more attention to the questions that you ask me at the end of the interview as I do the answers that you give me, because I know those answers are rehearsed. I know that you went on Google. I know that you studied all of that. But did you really put the time in to learn what you need to know? What are your unknown unknowns? Because that, to me, is the person that's going to be a great salesperson. And that was the mind shift that it took me a while to learn. And I missed out on probably having a lot more relationships, a lot more friendships in the industries that I served early on, because I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to prove that I was better than everybody else. And I wanted to make this huge difference immediately. And it was when I said, wait a second, I really don't know what I'm doing all the time. I got to step back and I got to put a lot more effort into learning and educating and always getting better. That's when suddenly it became more natural. It became a lot easier to do. It became a lot more fun. And the people I've met since then, some of them have gone on to become some of my best friends. Are they my greatest clients? No. But at some point, is there a chance they're going to need a product or service from me? Yes. And do I feel better about having that conversation with them? Absolutely, I do, because they know that I care about them, and I know that they care enough about me to make that phone call because they respect me.
Is this a shift that you had just through your own experiences? Was it something that you felt you were forced to learn, or was this something that you perhaps learned from a mentor of yours or a coach of your own?
Oh, no, the guy who founded our company, he definitely told me that many, many times. Didn't mean that I listened to him. Hard-headed, kind of an idiot at times. So I really had to learn it my own way by making mistakes so often that I had no other choice. There's three types of people out there: those that learn by reading, those that learn by watching, and those by peeing on the fence. I'm a pee on the fence type person. So I had to make that mistake so many times that I had no choice other than to self-reflect and go, okay, I'm doing this wrong. How can I do this better? And that's when I took the pressure off of myself and became genuinely curious about the person who I'm talking to, not viewing everybody as a customer, but again, viewing them as an opportunity to learn, because I start asking the right questions to enough people, I start getting really, really smart answers. My job then is to remember those answers and be able to apply them in future conversations when appropriate.
So today then at Violand Management Associates, you specialize in business coaching and professional training, right? Mm-hmm. You're helping companies formulate a plan, execute it. You provide guidance all throughout, the tools necessary as well. There's two segments that you serve, right? Traditionally, it is in disaster restoration, right? But you're making a shift as well into smaller businesses, right? HVAC and trades. Tell us a little bit about what it is you're doing.
We're about 40 years deep into this. And for most of them, we were primarily in the disaster restoration and cleaning industries. That's where the owner of our business came from, and that's where his connections were, and we grew. We're now serving 3 different countries in the disaster restoration industry: United States, Canada, and Australia. And we've had thousands of businesses that we've worked with over the years, and we started looking at, okay, what's next? What's the next challenge? Everybody who works here is an A player. Everybody here is looking for the next challenge to climb another mountain. And so we said, okay, let's start looking at some of these other industries. And we found that a lot of the metrics, because we don't teach technical. We're not going to teach you how to dry a room. We're not going to teach you how to hang drywall or paint it or run cable lines or anything. Our job is to go in and teach you how to run a better business, how to build a stronger team, a better culture, understand your financials more, do business transition, whatever it is to help you identify you're at point A, you want to get to point B, what are the goals, what are the objectives, what are the strategies that have to happen, and then not only executing on them, but holding you accountable, which is the hard part, because most small businesses, the owners became owners because accountability wasn't their strength. They wanted to be the hero. They wanted to work on this for a little bit, then that, and have a little bit of those ADHD behaviors that allow them to be very, very successful up until a certain point. And then it starts becoming a hindrance of getting to the next level. So our job is to figure out where you're at and then help you get to where you say you want to go.
Decades in the disaster restoration industry, as incredible as that is, I want to put that aside and I want to look at, the shift, this new mountain that you're pursuing, right? Because it's incredible to see when companies make a pivot and make a change for that next level of growth. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easier, that you're not going to encounter challenges as you did right in the beginning as well, right? New segment, new industry, new market, new customers at the end of the day. Tell us a little bit more about that shift into the new segment and, what some of the biggest challenges that you're observing are and how does you're tackling them with the insights and the knowledge you have from the other segment of the business?
Lack of patience on our part is probably the biggest of all of them. We forget that it took 40 years to become the biggest in the world at what we do.
Yeah.
And what we're doing now in the disaster restoration industry doesn't automatically translate over into these other industries because we don't have the name brand to it. We don't have the reputation. We don't have the relationships. So first and foremost, we had to go learn everything that we didn't know. And we thought we could make the transition pretty easily, and we found that wasn't the case. Even though we know what we're talking about, we're able to help them build these things because we haven't walked in their shoes in the plumbing industry. Plumbers are going, no, I want to talk to somebody who did this. Okay, I can understand that. So we had to go find people that have done it and have been successful and bring them onto the team and put them in charge of certain areas and say, okay, take what you know, take what we know, let's merge this together and let's put something together that makes sense for the end user. I think a lot of times over the years, because we're pretty good at what we do, because we're pretty smart, we feel like we know what the end user wants more than they do. And that mistake has probably come back to bite us a few times. And so just because we think it should be here doesn't mean it has to be here. There has to be steps along the way in order to get to that. So that's been a learning experience that we've finally have started to overcome. And now we're able to go up and stand in front of audiences and rooms full of plumbers and of HVAC and of roofers and building contractors and be able to have very similar conversations, but change the language in a few ways so that it relates more to them and what their experience is, so they can look up and go, okay, those guys get it. They understand the challenges that I'm facing. I'm not alone, and I can get some help. So really slowing it down and sharpening the saw was something that took a little longer, I think, than we expected. Maybe a little too much ego there on our part. But now that we've realized that there is a right way to do this and it's meeting the customer where they are, it's been a lot more successful.
Meeting the customer where they are. Jeff, could you share perhaps a story with us or an example just so the audience can see this in play, right? Because you're coming in and you're helping businesses strategize, plan, and execute so they can have a better business. Give us a little bit of that practical hands-on. Do you have a story that you could share with us of maybe a plumbing or HVAC company that you came in and you worked with and helped them drive that outcome?
Yeah. We've actually have a cement company that we work with. And really a lot of it was understanding the amount of capital that they had to have to be able to go through what they do and the labor intensives and all the permits and how the job cycles were so much different than what we were used to initially. And so coming in, and we really needed to focus on building a team. But that's not where they were. They were on, okay, we've got to get the policy and procedure in place on the job site. We had to get a little bit more into the weeds with what that looks like, which meant we had to go and sit and talk with other people who do similar work. We actually brought somebody onto the team from that world. She grew up in it. She's second generation. Her father had a business, and she was able to bring a lot of insight into, no, that's not how it works. We've got to do it this way. And this company went from hemorrhaging cash for about 2-3 years straight to now being exceptionally profitable. Their biggest issue, like many of those in the trades, is they just can't find enough workers. They have more business than they know what to do with. They've got to turn business down, unfortunately. And we spend an awful lot of time now. We're not going to hire somebody to fog a mirror. We're going to hire somebody who fits the culture, who's the right individual. And each time that we're adding another person onto the team, you're just seeing that business grow and become better, and you've got more voices in the room, you've got smart voices in the room, and they're building something really, really unique out there on the West Coast.
Wow. So, just coming in and helping people, not just necessarily with systems, but with the strategic understanding and oversight of, who is the right hire, right? What's that next step forwards? And perhaps being able to look at, in retrospect or hindsight, what have we done before that has put us in this position that's undesirable, right? What are the red flags to watch out for so that we can avoid this again?
There's a lot of hire slow, fire fast. Even in times of stress, you can't let that get away, because there's a reason why the saying "one bad apple spoils a bunch" exists, because that's true, and it's no different in the world of small business.
Mm-hmm. So at Violand, you've made a successful pivot or addition to what it is the company was built on, right? Not necessarily a change, right? That addition. There were some challenges you experienced in the beginning, right? Perhaps people not feeling, your target customers and clients not feeling like maybe you understood them at the end of the day, but you overcame that. You've been able to drive some pretty incredible results with clients. What's next on that side of the business and the mountain that you're climbing?
Right now, there's two things. There's still the continuation of refining our own way of delivering our service. I don't think that will ever get perfect. I hope it never does. I hope there's always on our end the curiosity of what can we do more, what can we do better, what are we doing right now that we think is fantastic that isn't really delivering any value to our customers, and it's costing us money. And can we stop doing those things? Those pieces all have to be realigned, building stronger teams. But a lot of our focus now has to turn inward into how can we be more efficient. Businesses have to be smarter today in the trades and in our world. 10 years ago, and I'll go back to the disaster restoration world, 10 years ago, you could be a restorer who happened to own a business who could make an awful lot of money, even though you didn't really know what you're doing on the business end, just because you were a very good restorer. There was so much work out there and the margins were so strong. And you see that still a little bit in the plumbing world and some of these other ones to where you can, sales hide sins in certain ways, but that's changing. The amount of work that's out there is condensing, the amount of competition that's out there is increasing, the amount of PE that's coming in, the sophistication of these other companies has changed all of these markets dramatically. You can no longer be a plumber that happens to own a restoration business or happens to own a plumbing business or a restorer that happens to own a restoration business. You have to be a business owner that happens to do plumbing or happens to do restoration or electrical or HVAC. And that has to be the focus first if you want to compete in today's world. That means you have to know your numbers inside and out. You have to know the KPIs and the metrics. You've got to build strong leadership teams. You've got to put the systems in place. You've got to do hiring the right way. There has to be a plan for how things happen. You have to hold people accountable. And you have to be strategic in building this business. And you have to be useful with your time, not just busy. So if that works for our customers, it has to be the same for us. So right now we're doing an awful lot of internal of how can we run a better business? What are the things that we're telling people to do that we have to do internally and perfect those to make certain that we can continue to grow and be able to provide because, if you're a piano teacher, eventually your students catch up to you. You always have to be one lesson ahead. So we're no different than anybody else in trying to stay one lesson ahead.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. The constant focus on progression and learning and staying ahead, right? Because if you're going to be climbing the mountain, you've got to stay strong. You got to stay healthy. You got to keep moving. Otherwise, you'll never make it to the top, or maybe not to the top of the next one. But I digress a little bit. Jeff, I'm curious for the listeners out there right now who are, maybe just starting out in business or who are trying to break into a new market segment themselves, right? This is something that you've recently gone through and experienced and found success in. When it comes to making that change or, attracting clients in a new market or perhaps in an existing one for any of the listeners out there who are struggling, what are you finding the most success with today when it comes to client acquisition?
I think a lot of it is providing a message to them that eliminates fear. When somebody makes a purchase, think about when you go get a new cell phone. You're always really, really excited because you got this great new cell phone, but you also get pretty aggravated because the things aren't where they used to be and all the buttons are different. And if you haven't done your research on it, you're staring at the thing sometimes wondering, why doesn't my code work anymore? Well, it's no different when somebody buys a service from you. There's the excitement of buying it. There's also the fear of what's going to change. What am I going to lose from this? And so you have to put a message together that says, hey, we're in this together. And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be all bells and whistles and puppies and rainbows, but it is going to be real. It's going to be hard, but we're going to do this together. And in the end, you're going to come out in a much better place than where you are right now. And you have to understand what that means to each individual person. Sitting down and writing out, okay, 5 years from now, what do we want this to look like? Begin with the end in mind, going back to Covey, and then work it backwards and say, okay, if we want to be here in 5 years, then what's the next, what's the 3 year from there? What's the 1 year from there? What's the couple months? What's the weekly? And you get back into the activities and the things that you can control and what has to be done this month and what has to be done next month. And that all has to be documented. And then you have to sit down once a quarter, review it, and make certain that everybody's doing their job and moving the needle. And some days we're not going to move the needle very far. And some days we're going to make very, very big impacts. And in the end, it's all going to average out. But it only averages out if you measure it. What's important gets measured. If you don't measure, it's not important. And through the measuring and then by having real candid conversations and everybody being honest about how they're progressing and doing what they need to get done and helping each other out as it needed, over time, these things do take care of themselves. It's not going to happen overnight, but it has to be intentional.
Intentionality right? We're talking about growth and strategy, attracting clients, growing the business from the inside with a focus on, fixing systems and improving. One of the biggest topics today, Jeff, is AI for growth, for improving systems, for, attracting clients, whatever it is that anyone is focused on. When it comes to what you guys are working on at Violand, where does AI start to come into play as part of that next shift and part of the current growth goals?
We've got 3 major business objectives this year. One of them is improve use of AI. Last year, we had 3 major business objectives. One of them was improve use of AI. The other 2 flipped out. That is key. It's in every single part. I've probably spent my first 3 hours of the day on it today for something internal that we're building out as far as a process for a sales program. And the other one was external, working for a client of ours as they were putting together a standard commission policy and taking it and saying, okay, what's working, and challenging AI. Stress this thing out, break it. Okay, each time we break it, how do we fix it? Okay, now we fix that, but stress this piece out over here. How do we break it again? How do we break it again? And run all the different scenarios. Something that would have taken me 2 weeks, sit down and do, I knocked out in about 35 minutes. And again, not every answer it gives you is right, so you still have to go back in and take a look and make certain that it's in line with what you believe and what you feel, but it speeds the process up. So we're using it right now with financials. You have to be, of course, careful with how you do that, but there's certain ways in which you can take some of the financials and not apply people's names and information like that. But you can keep it in-house and be able to run some of the assessments that go there. We're using it for HR. We're using it on the operation side for system and procedure. We're using it big time. We used it for the first time in our business planning retreats we do every year. We get about 150 small businesses and the trades together, and we write a strategic plan, a marketing plan, a financial pro forma with them. Well, this past year, we took the added step of writing the prompts for them. And a lot of these guys had never used AI before. This was their first time opening up Chat or Gemini or whatever one they wanted to use. But we would write the prompt for each part of it and have them utilize AI and sort of force them to use it and understand that it's not all scary killer robots that are coming from the future, but it does have ways of being able to provide insight that you wouldn't think of in ways past. So the amount of time that it saves us is exponential every single week. We can just do so much more through it. And again, being purposeful about it means an awful lot of training. We're bringing our team lives across the United States. You can only find so many business coaches in Canton, Ohio. So actually none of them work here in the home office. They're spread across the country. We're bringing them in the next 2 days. And about 25% of those 2 days is going to be spent on AI training so that we can continue, because it's just elevated itself so fast that you learn something and a week later, there's a better way of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. AI is incredible for compressing time frames and for increasing the capability to increase your output. Something you mentioned is that you're also providing some AI guidance and services to your clients, right? In the trade side of things, people are pretty hands-on. And when it comes to computers, I know myself, having come from a trades background with my father, computers aren't necessarily the most friendly thing for many trades companies today, right? There's a lot of opportunity there. From your perspective, Jeff, what are the biggest opportunities for trade businesses integrating AI into their own operations?
Yeah. I love it on the sales and marketing side. I think that on the sales and marketing side, it can do so much, so creative, that stuff that you're outsourcing right now and paying others to do, that you can now bring in-house. You can control the message a lot better. You can speed it up quickly. I think is completely underutilized. We had to revamp our entire sales training program over the last 6 months because of AI and being able to show how you can use it in every step along the way in order to provide a better delivery and more information. We show you how to do your routes off of it. We show you how to identify customers, how to do research on customers, how to find, based on what it can learn about those individual customers, what are the questions that you want to utilize when you first walk in, that you used to have to go on LinkedIn and hope you could find, and Google searches and hope you could find. Well, now it's handed to you on a silver platter in 2 minutes. Back when I worked at Shaw, I had to use MapQuest to find where these people were, and I had to print out all of these maps and carry them with me every single where I go. And that would take a day to put all that stuff together. You do that now in 2 minutes. It's unbelievable. And you just tell it, hey, route this like a UPS driver, and it will. And suddenly you're only turning right. and you spend a lot less time behind the windshield. So that part has been gigantic with it. Again, on the strategic side, a lot of it is just analytics, data analytics. Most people don't understand how to use them effectively, but if we can show them how to write the prompts that allow it to put information into chat. We show them how to keep it so that it's within your company. It doesn't get out there. And then you're able to really dive deep into the analytics and find things that otherwise, if you're not trained in how to do that, you'll never see, or you got to pay somebody an awful lot of money to go find. In my world, I'm pretty convinced. I get pushback from the new owner of our company. I'm not so sure how strong of a industry consulting is anymore. I think AI is going to wipe out consulting, but it can't touch coaching. And so that will always be the limit that it has. But as far as being able to provide you a system, a procedure, a number, a KPI, it's getting to the point where it can do that across the board. Now, knowing what to do with it and implementing it and managing to it and holding everybody accountable is a completely different world. But you can utilize it to find information now that you just 3-4 years ago wasn't available.
Jeff, your story covers self-discovery, strategic adaptation, and a deep commitment to human-first sales. For the founders and the leaders listening right now who are navigating their own growth shift, what's the single most important piece of advice that you'd leave them with about building strong foundations and making intentional decisions for long-term success?
Yeah, hire people smarter than you. It's the biggest and the best one that's out there. The founder of our business taught me that to go find, there's certain things that I know I'm really, really good at. And if I can find somebody better than me at those things, I'll hire that person too. There's things that I'm not good at, and I definitely have to hire somebody smarter and better than me to do. As the owner, your job isn't to carry every single hat. You're going to overpay yourself to do that. You're going to burn the candle at both ends. You're going to burn out. You're going to hate your life. You didn't start a company. You bought a job. That's a different mindset. You're chained to a desk. That's not why you did this. Build the team. The better team you can build and the more that you can put trust into that team. And I'll tell you what, I've got 2 people that report to me. One is on the sales side and one is on the marketing side. And I've done this for 25 years, and I think I'm pretty good at both sides of it. They're better than I am. Both of them are. And I'm having more fun right now in my role than I've ever had in my life in any other position, because I get to see them succeed. And their job is to come to me and tell me what they're doing, and then my job is to enable them to make it happen. And we're way better because of that. So if you can take that mindset and say, okay, where can we get better? Who can I bring in? And then just get in the position of enabling them and giving them the tools and the resources and the guidance that they need to fit your vision. It's a really cool time to be in the trades. Right.
Jeff, thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights with the audience today. For anyone listening who might like to learn more about Violand, or who might even like to just contact you to continue the conversation, what would be the best way to find you?
Yeah, just hunt around on our website. It's Violand, V as in Victor, IOLAND.com, and take a look at what we do. We're always happy to have a conversation with you. A lot of different services that we provide, but again, just be prepared to get asked a lot of questions, because that's our style. We want to learn from you before we can offer you anything. But again, David, thank you very much for having me on, and this has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us again today on The Growth Shift. Another powerful conversation on The Growth Shift. If you, like our guests, are ready to turn your expertise into a predictable, scalable growth engine, one that eliminates the grind of prospecting and enhances your high-value relationships, then it's time to connect with Valentix. We are not a marketing agency. We are your strategic growth partner, building intelligent systems that ensure your client acquisition is predictable, not dependent on chance. To see how our AI-powered frameworks can free up your time and fill your calendar with decision makers, visit valentix.io. Thank you for joining us on The Growth Shift. We'll see you next time.